Yeah, thank you very much for having invited me. I have a relatively short time, so I would like to show you a short video of the summary of the latest report on Christian persecution that Aid to the Church in Need produced. I am the editor-in-chief of the Religious Freedom in the World report, which is different. This is the one that I do is about all the religions in 196 countries and what's the situation of the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion in each one of them. The report for which I'm going to show now a video, it's only about the status of a selection of 24 countries where Christian persecution has been very acute in the last 2 years. This report was released last week in the UK. So can you please put the video?
Around the world, Christians are persecuted and harassed in more countries than any other faith. Priests are killed, the faithful are kidnapped, Christian women are raped and forced to deny their faith, churches are desecrated, and communities forced to flee. This latest edition of Aid to the Church in Need's Persecuted and Forgotten report examines the situation in 24 countries where the charity has found evidence of serious religious freedom violations. Persecuted and Forgotten found that in 75% of countries the report surveyed, the faithful suffered increased depression or persecution during the review period of September 2020 to September 2022. In Africa, the situation of Christians worsened with shocking evidence of a sharp increase in genocidal violence from jihadists and other militants. According to one analysis, between January 2021 and June 2022, more than 7,600 Christians were killed in Nigeria, with more than 40 killed when gunmen opened fire on St. Francis Xavier Church in Ondo State during Mass on Pentecost Sunday. In Mozambique, Al-Shabaab stepped up its indiscriminate attacks, killing Christians, emptying Christian-majority villages, and burning down churches as part of its general campaign of terror. In the Middle East, continuing migration exacerbated the crisis threatening the survival of 3 of the world's oldest and most important Christian communities in Iraq, Syria, and Palestine. In Syria, Al-Qaeda offshoot reportedly displaced large numbers of Christians, converting homes into mosques. In Iraq, numbers have fallen from around 300,000 before the 2014 Daesh invasion to as few as 150,000. And 75 years on, from the creation of the State of Israel, Christians in the West Bank have declined from 18 to less than 1% today. In Saudi Arabia and elsewhere, Christians are a silent, unseen minority, banned from publicly displaying crosses, and there is little sign of change on the horizon. In Asia, state authoritarianism has caused growing oppression against Christians in Burma, China, Vietnam, and elsewhere. At its worst, freedom of religion and conscience is being strangulated, as in North Korea. Religious nationalism intensified problems for the faithful, including the Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan, which saw Christians fleeing the country in droves. In India and Sri Lanka, religio-nationalism has seen ongoing attacks against minorities. Nationalist groups have targeted Christians in places of worship, and even police have arrested believers or stopped church services. And in Pakistan, Christians and other non-Muslims are at increased risk of harassment, arrest, or violence, which in some parts of the country includes kidnapping and rape. First-hand testimony, case studies, and country regional and global analysis showing the extent to which Christians are targeted around the world. Steps to help them by the international community have often been too little, too late. Their plight is ignored, and so it is that in many countries, Christians continue to be persecuted. Let us break the silence and do all we can to ensure they are not forgotten.
Well, this is the summary of this new text. Has one page per country of explaining what is the situation of the Christianity in that country in particular. As I mentioned, this report comes once every 2 years. And as Baroness Cox was saying, there is, in order to make the case, in order to have more often conversations and discussions about persecution, it is important to have evidence, to collect evidence and solid legal basis for making the case of this persecution. And I have to say that of all the main religions that exist in the world, the absolute worst at reporting violations of the right to religious freedom or belief are the Christians. When I am trying to make the report on the religious freedom in the world, then I have to find out who reported hate crimes, for example, in the OSCE countries, which are all the European Union, plus going all the way to the border with China. And in there, I only find reports of violations of hate crimes, which are physical attacks against people or properties. In the case of the Christians, these cases are reported by the Anti-Defamation League. If it was not because of our brothers of the Jewish community, there wouldn't be reports of cases of hate crimes against Christians. And that is definitely the case. When I was looking for the report on the status of freedom of religion in the United States, there's absolutely not one single instance in the entire United States that makes a report on religious freedom in the United States, which left me completely flabbergasted. We have it in our religious freedom report. We do have a report on the United States, but it's really difficult to collect when only the Anti-Defamation League reports on attacks on Christians and also on Muslims, but the Muslims are more active also reporting on attacks on freedom of religion. So when you see all those maps in this video, and you see a very horrible map in our report, which is a map that many people tell me, but it's the same map as the last time. I can show it to you like this. You see all the red? And everybody says, yeah, that's the same map as Amnesty International, the same one of Human Rights Watch, the same one of I don't know. So I want you to see in these maps that we were showing you, there are 3 maps. There are, of course, the map of persecution and of suffering. There's also the map of the people who have the strongest faith in the world, who are ready to die for their faith. So the discourse that we sometimes have in Europe about the Christian victimhood, and they are really exaggerating, and they are it's just whitewashing to have work for the Christians in Mozambique or in somewhere else. These people who are ready to die for their faith, and they maintain their belief in God, even in front of a machete, they are the strongest people. So these maps also show you when whoever has this idea that faith is diminishing, just look at this map, remember it, all that red and all that orange. Okay, and then the message for us here is that it is the map of impunity. Why it doesn't change? Why is it always the Human Rights Watch map, the Amnesty International map, the Crisis Group map? They look so much the same. Because it is the map of impunity. These states can get away with everything. As Mr. Tarrant was saying, I mean, the situation in which even the persecutors feel so comfortable that they even start signing their articles with their own name when they are writing horrible anti-Semitic statements, that tells you that there's no punishment. And when you hear the name of the covenant that was made after the Holocaust, that is called the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide Act, then you know that you have to think about the prevention, not only on the punishment. And what is it that we are not doing lately, so that this map continues red, continues orange, and it's becoming even worse. As we saw in this video, the persecution against Christians in this particular case is becoming worse. But I am going to have the next edition of this report, of which I am, as I tell you, the editor-in-chief. So I have to read all the reports, and I'm already reading them, and they are extremely harrowing. The situation is really becoming much worse. Because the pandemic and because of the current geopolitical situation in the world where the focus of attention of the big powers are in particular areas and not others, tyrants are so free. Tyrants are so happy. The killings are increasing, the abuses are increasing, the impunity is increasing. So if on top of that we do not put any, we do not open any, we don't file any case, we do not file a complaint, what is it that we are expecting? We have to help the victims to open those cases, to establish the precedent so that we can say something for them. Baroness Cox was talking about Nigeria. Nigeria and Pakistan are, to me, over the last 2 years, really the cases in which the persecution has increased at an incredibly alarming speed. Now, in Nigeria, we are always time, you notice, no, in some places when you start discussing about religious persecution, you talk about minorities, religious minorities. But let me tell you something. In Nigeria, there is no religious minority being persecuted. It's half and half. Half Muslims, half Christians. 100 million of each. What minority? Well, there's a way to fabricate an artificial minority by eliminating its political clout and economic clout. What is happening now? That these people that were of more or less equal economic power are being chased away from their lands, their shops, their fields, their education, their schools. As you heard, there are abductions of hundreds of children in the schools in Nigeria. When you leave entire villages without house, you leave them homeless, you leave them destitute, without education, without access to public health. You set them on the run into IDP camps where there are 1.7 million of IDPs, internally displaced individuals, only in one province in Nigeria that is called Benue. All the cases that we heard from Baroness Cox are from the north of Nigeria. Now, these terrorists, they said, okay, since we are doing so well, let's move to the center. And now it's called the Middle Belt, and Benue is in the Middle Belt. That is where they are attacking absolutely 2 or 3 times a week, pardon. And 2 or 3 times a week. They are abducting priests and sisters, and that's one act of terrorism, okay? Abducting a priest or a sister is an act of terrorism because of the effect it has on the population. Everybody's set on the run, and they become this destitute, poor minority, where they were actually in the state of Benue, for example. There is 97% Christian population. So how can you make them a minority? Well, like that. It's like they have a manual. So we heard also from several among us that states have no friends, have interests. And this is something that is absolutely notorious in Armenia, in Azerbaijan, when we saw Ursula von der Leyen going recently to kiss the president of Azerbaijan because he was going to continue selling us gas and oil. And we have seen in Nigeria a complete parade of EU heads of state and ministers of energy going to secure oil and gas from Nigeria. So who is going to irritate Nigeria? In Pakistan, they also go to Pakistan because Pakistan is now our friend to prevent further expansion of the Taliban in Afghanistan. So nobody wants to irritate Pakistan. But what can we do? I mean, it is really something that the killings are increasing. Nothing is changing. Okay, so let's find the way to help. The United States is now trying to move towards this definition, the use of the term terrorism in the attacks to the religious communities, to the Christian communities in particular, because they cannot go and say to Mr. Buhari, the president, you are not protecting your citizens. They have been saying it for 10 years and he doesn't do anything. So what is it going to work? Probably because it has a specific legal international status, the word terrorism, we can offer help against terrorist acts to any head of state without telling him that he's a good for nothing. So this is really an opportunity to also to focus on what Mr. Holbenji was underlying, that wording is very important. We cannot just call our right, for example, freedom of religion, just call it freedom of cult or freedom of worship. or freedom of belief. The name of the right, okay, is freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. And the definition of the full right to religious freedom was given also in the presentation of Baroness Cox at the beginning. It has several dimensions, one of which is the one of being able to go to a church. But that's only 1 out of 10, you see. So we have to remain vigilant to our full right, that they don't start chipping away. Here in the Western world, these freedoms are being chipped away, because it also includes this right. And it's not just a nice human right, a nice feeling. It has been translated into constitutions. It is a right that exists and has been ratified by all of our governments. And still the little fraction of the right to educate your children according to your beliefs, according to your convictions, is just being ignored in many European countries already, where they are actually, like in Spain, for example, where they are already banning Christian education from schools. So, or Christian praying, no, in the processions, if you want to pray in front of an abortion clinic, they can put you in jail, and they are already putting people in jail because they are praying silently in front of an abortion clinic. So these kind of situations is because of our ignorance of our own rights. I would encourage all of us to really become more literate in our right to religious freedom. And these reports should help us understand what bothers other people from us believers. See it also from the other side, because we say, for example, persecution of Christians. Yes, but who persecuted them? As Peter was telling us, it depends. Sometimes it's the government, sometimes it's the mobs, sometimes it's social pressure so strong that the politician doesn't dare to say anything contrary. So there you are. There are different systems of ways to analyze what is going on. Why this map doesn't change? What is it that I am not doing? What pressure am I obeying? And the perpetrator, what is he hearing? Because just remember one type of horrible attacks that happened here in Europe, the driving on the street on the shopping of Christmas time. And the driver is, before rolling over the people, starts asking you, excuse me, are you Buddhist? Excuse me, are you Muslim? No, he just writes on everybody because he believes that you are not worth it, that you don't have right to stay alive. So the motivation of the attacker is as important as the religion of the victim at the end. We should not forget those different ways to analyze the situation in order to select our actions to stop them. And well, so as I was saying, my new report is coming in April 2023. So there will be new information for all of us to work with. And well, I'm here for any questions that you may have. I'm very happy to.